This incident took place in early 2014 during a trip to Taiwan. I was studying at the University of Hong Kong at the time, and during a break in the semester, 4 of my friends and I decided to go on a short holiday to the country's capital, Taipei. Since I was already halfway through my year in Hong Kong, I wanted to travel around Asia as much as possible, and by this point, the only other place I had been was Thailand. So, needless to say, I was super stoked when we arrived in Taipei. We did all the touristy stuff you'd expect, checking out the city, going to the top of Taipei 101, and, of course, appreciating the local bar scene. A lot of drinks were had, and a lot of vomit was spilled, but the people there were so friendly, and despite the embarrassing state that we were all in, we still managed to make some friends on the street whilst shotgunning beers outside of a convenience store. Essentially, we all fell in love with the city, and after exploring the urban areas extensively, 3 of us decided to get in touch with Taipei's natural beauty by hiking to the top of Elephant Peak just outside of the city. It didn't seem like a long or arduous trek, and just sounded like a fun way to spend one of our days there. It would also provide us with an awesome view of the city. So on the morning that we decided to go, 2 of our friends went to further explore the city, whilst my friends Nick, Greg, and I put on our proverbial hiking boots and caught a train to the bottom of the mountain. We began our journey to the top, and my memory is a little hazy, but I believe we didn't take the usual route since we didn't encounter anybody for a long, long while. Obviously, this was fine. The 3 of us were happy to simply be soaking in the outdoors away from the bustle of the nearby city. It was all just general forest that surrounded us, but because it was in Taiwan, it had that exotic vibe that made the hiking experience feel somehow fresh and new. It was about an hour into the trek, and we still hadn't seen anybody. We weren't even sure if we were going the right way, to be honest, but since we were confident about the way back and had already come this far, we just kept venturing further into the forest. We reached a path that led up to a steep hill, and from what we had researched, we're all sure that this is the way up to the first checkpoint of this more obscure trail. We started hiking up when something catches my attention. I pointed out to Nick and Greg. Out of a bush on our right appeared a dog. A wild dog. It had no collar and was really mangy looking. It wasn't growling, but it was staring us down, standing tall and strong like one of those Chinese foo dog statues. The 3 of us stopped and stared back at it. What's he doing out here by himself? I thought. Unfortunately for us, this was only the alpha. When we finally took our eyes away from it, we noticed that a large number of other dogs had appeared out of seemingly nowhere, almost as if they had snuck up on us. There must have been around 20 to 25 of them, all medium or large-sized. Strangely, they were a variety of breeds. Now, I don't know much about wild dog packs, but I assumed that they would all be of the same breed. None of us said that we were scared. In fact, the 3 of us didn't really say anything. There was some nervous joking from Greg about how he hoped we'd all had our rabies vaccination, which was followed by some similarly nervous laughter. But it was obvious that we all had the feeling that something bad might go down. I thought back to our accommodation in Hong Kong, where we would regularly hear wild dogs in the hills behind our complex going crazy each night as they fought each other or hunted for other creatures to kill. My mind couldn't help but jump to the conclusion that this group of wild dogs had similar bloodthirsty intentions. By this point, we were basically surrounded. I had a large, sharp rock in my hand that I had picked off the ground in case they came charging at us. Not that the three of us would have been able to fight off this many dogs, but in some warped, animalistic way, I supposed I might at least be able to take one with me or something. I guess in situations such as this, instinct takes over, and that seemed logical to me in the moment. Since I have 2 dogs of my own, I knew that in dog language, eye contact was confrontational. I remembered that to convince a dog you weren't a threat, that you should yawn, lick your lips, and not look them directly in the eyes. This might all be bullshit in reality, but it's just what I remembered. So we all just averted our eyes, focused on the trail, and slowly walked past them, continuing up the path. Looking back, we could see that they were following us. At least 20 sets of intense eyes locked onto us. As tempting as it may have been to have run up the path, any idiot knows that those dogs could have easily outrun us, so we tried to keep our cool and just continued upwards. When we reached the checkpoint, we saw the first sign of human life we'd seen in a long while. Just a normal-looking guy, chilling at the viewpoint with around 10 other dogs around him. I think of this guy as the king of the dogs, since from the way the dogs were interacting with him, it was clear that they were all his. At this point, the dogs that had been following us had caught up and returned to their master. We all said a silent thank God to ourselves. The scraggly old dogs weren't strays after all. Or maybe they were, but they at least weren't man-eaters. We had a quick look at the views from this point, and then swiftly move onwards. After about 5 minutes, we reached the top of what can only be described as a makeshift ladder that we had to climb in order to continue. It didn't look particularly safe, consisting of a few loosely nailed planks of wood and a chain handle grip all the way up, and would require some upper body strength since it was close to a vertical incline. We debate about what we should do for a few seconds when we're interrupted by something once again. The sound of an extremely loud horn, followed by a chorus of about 50 dogs howling in unison, all going nuts. Like, really nuts. It was like something out of a Lord of the Rings battle scene, like a horn of war. We all knew the conclusion that the king of the dogs was summoning his hounds and ordering them to hunt us down. Fuck it. We're climbing up this thing right now. Long story short, we make it to the top of this fairly dangerous, rickety ladderish thing at top speed and encounter nothing strange for the rest of the hike. In fact, we actually made it to the top of Elephant Peak. It was all right. Nothing mind-blowing. We took a few pictures and shared a few laughs about the whole ordeal. The rest of the trip was awesome, and the 3 of us are pretty confident that the horn and the guy with all the dogs were harmless and most likely unrelated. So I hope this wasn't too anticlimactic for you all. In hindsight, I'm quite glad this all happened, as it has given me a fun story to tell whenever someone asks about, traveling or whatnot. But at the time, I have to say that I was certain that we were going to get torn apart by wild dogs. But don't let it put you off going to Taipei. That place is extremely awesome.
This happened to me a few weeks ago. A little backstory. I'm currently in college, about an hour away from my hometown/parents' house. Every other weekend or so, I drive home to spend time with my parents. I then leave around 8 or 9 on Sunday nights to come back up to my apartment. By that time the sun is set and it's completely dark out. My parents live in a very rural area of Ohio, where there are fields for miles and little to no traffic at night. One particular Sunday, I was driving back to my apartment like usual. It was around 8:30 and I'm about 25 minutes into my hour drive. It's dark out, and I haven't seen a single car the whole ride. I drive through this tiny town with only one stoplight as I make my way to the interstate. As I reach the edge of this town, into more country roads, a red beat-up car cuts me off by pulling out in front of me. Obviously, I'm pissed. There are no other cars around. This guy could have waited for me to pass. I get over it quickly because my favourite song at the time comes on the radio and I start singing along. I began to notice that the car in front of me is only going about 45 miles per hour. The speed limit is 65 miles an hour, so it's a bit ridiculous. I look for ways to pass him, but an intersection is coming up. I decide to wait and see if he goes a different direction than me. It's a four-way intersection, pitch black with no one else around. As we come closer to it, the car in front of me switches on its hazards and stops in the middle of the road. I slow down so I don't hit him. I see the driver's side window roll down and an arm wave at me as if to call me over for help. Now, I'm a very paranoid person, so I refuse to stop for someone I don't know in the middle of the night. I quickly maneuver around the car and make a right turn at the intersection, leaving the car behind. I look in my rearview mirror and see the car switched off its hazards immediately and gun it out of there. Another car comes out of a driveway near the intersection and follows it. Remember, there was no one else in the road with us for miles. I can only assume the two cars were together trying to get me to pull over and do God knows what with me. To this day, I don't drive that late home anymore. So, creepy car guy with your hazards on, let's never meet again.